I would just like to go down through and take a roll call before we get started. Starting alphabetically with Faye Anderson.
Here.
Jim Baines. Jim sometimes comes in a little late. John Kochko. I've seen John.
Here.
Jane Dyer.
Here.
Olivia Ferretta. Rob Frank. Lester French.
Here.
Sarah Gass. Sarah probably won't be joining us. We'll have a new member in the fall, I'm assuming. Alan Gordon. Jessica Hamilton. I've seen Jessica, I believe.
Here.
Karen Hawkins.
Here.
John Holmes.
Here.
Tanya Jean-Jacques.
I'm here.
Anthony Liberatore.
Here.
There you are. Chair is here. Marianne Royal.
Here.
And Jim, are you with us now, Jim Baines?
I sure am.
All right. And Rob Frank? Okay, still no Rob, but everyone else is here, except for our two student reps. All right. That being said, can I have a motion for our approval of our minutes of our meeting on June 10th?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Liberatore,
Second.
second by Lester French. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will have to go through with another roll call vote. All right. Faye Anderson,
Aye.
Jim Baines,
Aye.
John Colchdo, Jade Dyer,
Aye.
Rob, well, we don't have Rob. Lester French,
Aye.
Alan Gordon. Did I have Alan when we?
Ellen is
Heath,
on.
did you hear me? It was Rob.
Alan is on. Okay.
And Heath, did
I'll
you
get
catch
you
that?
up. No, I didn't. Rob is with us now, and you are in approval.
Yes, I said aye, yeah.
Okay. Jessica Hamilton,
Aye.
Karen Hawkes,
Aye.
John Holmes,
Aye.
Tanya Jean-Jacques,
Aye.
Anthony Liberatore.
Yep.
Chair is aye. Marianne Royal.
Aye.
All right. That was unanimous. That takes us, Regan, do we have any adjustments to the agenda this evening?
We do not.
Okay. So this brings us to the time where if we have folks that are wishing to address the board, you can do so now. I should have gave you a little heads up probably at the beginning, but do we have anybody that's a member of the public that wishes to address us this evening? Seeing none, that brings us to my report. I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the feelings from the members of the board in their perspective of what we had for a hybrid meeting last week. I'd just like to have a couple people from two or three people that maybe attended the board meeting in person, and maybe two or three people that were virtual, and what their perspective was of the way the meeting went, and if anybody'd like to speak to that.
Heath, I'll say something. This is Jane.
Yeah, hi Jane.
Hi. I was remote, and I felt it was disjointed. I felt like we had two meetings, and not that it was anyone's fault or that it was, people were trying to have that way, but to me, it felt like there were two meetings. And those that were together at Hampden Academy were having their meeting, and other people kind of joined in. So I felt it was disjointed. Not cohesive, I guess. So that was just my perspective.
Well, thank you for that, Jane. As we go on, maybe it's something we need to think about, because this might be something that we do at some level for a while, depending on how people feel as far as their comfort zones. But anybody else?
Yeah, Heath, this is Rob. I think I agree with Jane that there was I think that the technical issues with muting and unmuting and the whole mic pickup and all that made it a little difficult. I think if we picked up one of those room-wide mics and allowed all of us just to turn our speaker and our mic off, it would allow it to run much more smoothly, because that, to me, the audio and the interrupts, that was a little bit troubling. But I have to say, sitting in the room and seeing the people on the screen versus in the room, it was nice to be there to see the folks, but I felt like we are now, that you could really capture everything going on in the meeting. And again, maybe that's what Jane was saying, is she couldn't catch what was going on in the room because she wasn't in the room. But I didn't feel like there was a separate meeting. I just felt like we were the cause of some of the technical difficulties trying to bounce things back and forth.
Rob, I think that exactly is what it is, that there was the disjointed piece of people at Hampden Academy in the library. Really, you felt you were having a meeting, and the rest, or I felt I was watching you have a meeting.
Got it.
Heath?
Yeah.
Mary Ann here.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary Ann.
I had the opposite experience of Jane. I was very comfortable. I thought it was great that the people there could do the making the motions and seconding, because that is a little problematic when we are remote. So I thought that was a really positive aspect of having the hybrid model. And I didn't feel excluded or not having an opportunity to speak. So I'm pretty comfortable with the hybrid version. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann, for that. Anybody else?
Yeah, Heath.
Go ahead, Jim.
I want to give a little feedback from one who attended the meeting from the passenger seat of a moving vehicle a couple weeks ago. My great nephew had a graduation party in Warren that night, so I figured, okay, I'll go to that around 7. I'll skip out. My son will drive home, and I'll attend it that way. I don't recommend it because it was a little disjointed, and I admit I kind of added to the disjointedness of it all here, trying to participate as much as I could. It also doesn't help when you're driving around the Camden Hills and it's, you lose connection altogether. But if you have to join it from a moving vehicle, then do it, but it's not recommended. I will tell you that firsthand.
Well, thank you, Jim. That was actually a different perspective than I was even thinking of, but thank you very much.
Sure. It's not terrible, once you get away from, well, honestly, the Camden Hills, because that's where it's awful. But the rest of it, I listened. I tried to participate where I could, but that part of it, I felt like it was best to kind of sit back and listen, because you're always afraid that you're going to kind of add to the disjointedness a little bit.
Yes. All right. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, I think I'll turn the meeting over to Regan.
Okay, thank you, Heath. I'd like to go ahead and announce resignations this evening. Tonight I'm announcing the resignation of Matt Lindeman. He has been a 5th grade teacher for us at Weatherby School, and he will be moving on to an assistant principal position in the Booth Bay region. So our congratulations and best wishes to him, and thanks for his service to our district over the years. Now we can move on to nominations. First, I would like to announce the nomination of Ginger Hansen. Ginger is being nominated for grade 6 social studies at Reedsbrook Middle School. Ginger has a bachelor's degree from Texas Woman University, and she has been a long-term substitute for us in this very position. And she also has served at Wagner Middle School. So I recommend Ginger Hansen at a salary of $37,466.
So moved.
Second.
Regan, how many nominations do we have this evening?
We have 3 total.
Do you think we could go through them and then we'll take them all as a slate as long as no one has a issue with that, and we'll do a roll call as a slate? Okay.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, so in addition, we have Emily Burns as a kindergarten teacher at McGraw School. Emily has a Bachelor of Science in Early Childhood Education from the University of Maine. She's student taught for us at McGraw School and also at Smith School. And so we recommend Emily Burns at a salary of $36,930. Next, we have Rudy Robinson. Rudy is our nominee for Hamden Academy social worker and counselor. Rudy has a Master's of Education in Counseling from the University of Maine and a bachelor's degree in Psychology and Occupational Therapy from Husson. She has several years' experience as a mental health clinician, and we recommend her with a salary of $45,834.
All right. Can I get a motion to take
So
all 3
moved.
of those? Okay. John
To
Holmes.
accept as a
moved.
slate.
John Holmes has moved, and Dr. Liberatore has seconded that. Any discussion? All right. Faye Anderson,
Aye.
Jim Baines,
Aye.
John Koshko. Jane Dyer,
Aye.
Hey, John, you were muted. Yeah.
I'll come back to John. Rob Frank,
Aye.
Lester French,
Aye.
Alan Gordon,
Aye.
Jessica Hamilton,
Aye.
Karen Hawks,
Aye.
John Holmes,
Aye.
Tanya Jean-Jacques,
Aye.
Anthony Liberatore.
Aye.
Chair is aye. Marianne Royal
Aye.
and John Koshko. Coming back to you.
Aye.
All right. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Did you get me that time?
Yes, I got you.
Okay, so moving on, reading the essential behaviors and outcomes this evening is John Cottrell.
I'm sorry, I'm unequipped with any document, so I cannot do that.
I can do it.
Okay, thanks, John.
Education enables all students to learn the skills, acquire the knowledge, and develop the attitudes necessary for them to reach their potential as citizens who can meet the challenges of a changing global society. We believe all citizens in our communities share the responsibility to educate our children and themselves. Our schools are community support systems and should welcome and encourage all members of our communities to participate, and our schools will have a supportive and empowering atmosphere for all students and community members.
Okay, thank you, John. This time, I'd like to move on to our next agenda item, which is to review listening tour results from the past year. So I'm going to share the screen now and move into a PowerPoint presentation. And at the conclusion of it, I'll be happy to take questions. So over this past year, I have engaged in listening tour sessions throughout the district, and it's been a very rewarding experience to get out and just be able to have good conversation with so many stakeholders in our district, and also to have the chance to pose some prompts to folks that we wouldn't typically talk about day to day, and hear what the insight is from the inside of our organization. So I'll move on to share with you the process, the questions, and then the responses that were received in general. So the format of the listening tour was really taken from me looking up what superintendents nationwide have done in the past when they have started in districts both very large and small. And so distilled from that approaches of going to each school, making sure that we were reaching out to different stakeholders like EA22, went and sat on a SEER bus with all of the bus drivers. We had a listening tour there, and then invited the town managers to the central office to speak with me about their perspectives. Generally, the listening tour occurred in staff meeting groups, so you can imagine larger size groups of 30 or more at times in the room together. So there was good dialogue and listening across folks. The way that we worked it was that the questions were selected and we would put them on Google Slides so that people could see the question in that arena in which we were speaking, but also allowed access to the questions in a Google form anonymously. So those people that might be more likely to be introverted and not want to raise their hand or speak out in a large group could in real time give a response or leave the meeting, reflect on something, and add their anonymous response later on. And that proved to be very effective. We had many, many responses coming into the Google form. As people were speaking in the meetings, Mary Giard accompanied me to the listening tour sessions and would take notes into the Google form so that all of the verbal responses were captured as well. Generally, it took about 45 minutes to go through 11 questions on the tour, and every school or place where we had a listening tour had the same questions until it came to a specialty group like the town managers or EA22, because they had already been in the listening tour as teachers. We talked about things that were just simply on their mind, themes that resonated with them around the school district. All the responses were reviewed, categorized, and takeaways were discerned that you'll hear about tonight. The questions came from a place of me really researching what these superintendents who have come before me have done and what they found to be very useful questions for the longer haul versus questions that just elicited insight for the moment. And really the focus of these questions was not about specific issues. It was really about how can your new superintendent serve you well, and how can our district best serve students? So the responses have been reviewed really using a research lens. I also have had Tina Boone coming on board now and then when she can, and I've had her take a look because she wasn't in any of these sessions, just to see if she could confirm that some of the takeaways I had seen she too saw, or different trends. And so we've gone through this very carefully, and I want everyone to know who participated. Their responses mattered and certainly have been reviewed and considered. So I'm just going to quickly go through the questions that were posed so you have a feel for what this was like. What are you most proud of about RSU 22? In your opinion, how does RSU 22 compare to the way we want to be as a district? What are the top challenges facing RSU 22 in the next 5 to 10 years? How would you describe the climate and culture of the school district? Why do some children in RSU 22 achieve at a high level while others do not? What type of superintendent visibility means the most to you or has the biggest effect on how you do your job? What is the one issue, if we dealt with it, would improve the effectiveness of the school district? What workforce focus should, and I was talking about employees as our workforce, what workforce focus should the district be paying closest attention to in RSU 22? And what is the one thing you would like to change or improve so that we can provide a first-class education for all of our students? What do you wonder, wish, or worry about the transition to a new superintendent? And what would you do if you were I? So basically, if you were in my shoes, what would come next? So I'm going to roll into the key takeaways. And we have about 4 slides of key takeaways. I want to tell you what takeaways mean to me. Takeaways are things that struck me. So takeaways can include trends. We've certainly counted responses to see where we're going to have buckets that really are important to a great number of people. We also looked for situational types of responses where someone might be having some type of experience in their day-to-day life as a teacher or staff member or bus driver or a union member. And this got reflected in more than one place. We also looked for those perspectives that were outside the box ideas and unique that we should be thinking about. And then we looked heavily for what should be continued in our district around superintendency, what should be changed, and what is the same in those categories for students. So here we go. Overall, teachers in our district are seeing increased needs in students. This was a considerable takeaway. They attribute these needs to a variety of factors. We've written them there: the social emotional needs, the poverty, drug abuse in our communities and in our region and state. Increased negative student behaviors have affected not just teacher experience, but the teachers let us know it's affected the students' experience in being able to access learning well. Teachers also highlighted the increased needs and numbers of special education students in our district. And one perceived solution to address this was around having lower or smaller class sizes. And this came up in several different areas. And so we'll be paying close attention to that and have already been looking into the research beyond what we've typically been utilizing. And I'll say we've already taken action here. Smith School will be receiving another classroom teacher this year, and we also had another special education teacher hired last year in addition to a classroom teacher last year. So this is something that we're looking at, especially in those early elementary grades. There's definitely a trend that staff would like to have the leadership address our lack of intervention programs or the quality of the intervention programs that we might introduce. They offered examples, and you can see the interest they have there in literacy and social supports and so forth. And then concerns were expressed across multiple questions regarding the decreased size of our applicant pools for many different job categories. And we bring that up here because when you are looking for teachers that are having the skills and past experiences, veteran status, that are used to dealing with many of these obstacles and challenges that children face, as our applicant pools shift, we're going to have to really be sure we're looking at what training is going to be needed. Teachers regularly mention that there are equity issues between communities and schools in our district. And there are different attitudes about school and learning across each of our 4 communities. And this was referenced again and again in our survey. We also saw that there was real interest on staff members' part for creating opportunities for students to be able to work together and have familiarizing activities and so forth so that they can socialize prior to 9th grade at Hamden Academy. So the one thing about these listening tour responses is how wonderfully people offered solutions. It wasn't all about just tell us what problems are. People have great ideas out there, and we're going to be harnessing this. So they offered a lot of very specific ideas around sports, field trips, and other social activities we could be doing. And then expectation for students were named as a concern on several levels. So there is, I'd say, a pervasive perception of decreased expectations, that there is a lowering of the bar, and it's not necessarily only at school. I think there was a sense that it is cross-cutting, coming from many different environments, that there is inconsistency with student expectations that ends up creating some challenges for us. and that RSU 22's longstanding reputation for excellence and rigor is perceived to be declining. And we want to make sure this is at the center of our minds, because I do believe RSU 22 not just has a brand, but we have a desire that our students are experiencing excellence and rigor consistently at all levels. Teachers also let us know that there is a trend that we need more options for high school students. And we saw this a bit with middle school too, about allowing access to UTC earlier. High school teachers certainly were letting us know this was important, but we also heard it from middle school as well, that those UTC-like environments would be very helpful for students. Create more alternative education options, celebrate those students who choose a career path with the same excitement as those who choose a college path, and make sure that those who do choose the work options are equally honored, so that when they take advantage of those options, we know that the opportunities are in place to help them be successful. Recognizing in RSU 22 that not everyone is college bound, and that we're celebrating academic success and career success on the same plane. And then also have the celebration of academic and intellectual success that is equal to that we sometimes put on athletic success in RSU 22. Technology concerns were expressed, and all of these listening tour sessions with teachers were pre-COVID. So certainly I think if we did this again, we might not see as much that is the same around technology. Probably new obstacles would present. But the concerns ranged from having old devices to not being able to monitor student technology use well, and how that is impacting the learning environment, and also the student management of their own technology when they're off campus as well. Several staff members wrote to us that they were interested in narrowing professional development focus so that they could actually become experts on a topic. They felt that RSU 22 was initiative heavy, and they don't feel that they can always do it all well. And they referenced inch deep and mile wide type perceptions. And then initiative fatigue was absolutely apparent in our responses. And a trend was noted that the faculty perceive that their own schools are very collaborative in-house, but that they would really appreciate knowing that that collaboration can extend across campuses, and that we're having our staff members be intercollaborative rather than just within house. So there also is a trend and a perception that RSU 22 needs to focus on going back to the basics and go back to being the best at core subjects, and really focus on those and do them very well. I think this is where some of the rigor and expertise conversation came in. Teachers want to focus on academic excellence. That was very apparent. Or if they've been here a long time, they remember when they felt there was the emphasis on academic excellence, and they want us to get back to it. So there's a trend that rigor has declined, as we've let you know already. And then when it comes to how do we fix this, there definitely is financial concern among our workforce that it would help if funding was at a different level, and that more money would solve some of these problems. Perception that additional funding is needed is a trend. So the staff was writing in this. Of course, when I was assistant superintendent, it's pretty evident that they want the behavior that was elicited this past year or two to continue. They like the visibility, the availability, the accessibility, and they did cite many ways in which those types of getting out and being accessible worked, and so we'll continue to pay attention to that for both the superintendency and the assistant superintendency. So that concludes my review of the bigger ideas that are takeaways. Lots of challenges here, but what I have to say is I was so impressed that the staff is so committed to us getting back to who we have been in the past. For many people who have who've been long lived here and are ready to challenge themselves to be the very best we can. So I'll take questions.
Great presentation.
I agree,
I have
Regan.
a question.
Okay.
So, in the discussion for options for Hamden Academy students, did ROTC come up in any of those discussions as an option, as an alternative to college-bound kids?
So yes, actually ROTC was a comment made by one participant in the listening tour. So we actually have that data in our responses. And then Hamden Academy has started the, they haven't literally launched the application, but they have pulled that down. They have reviewed it. We even thought about it for this year and didn't have the timeline. They're right on it.
Excellent, thank you.
Welcome.
Well, actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
Actually, ROTC is not necessarily an alternative to college. As I've tried to point out a number of times without many people listening very well, if you want to spend a lot of money going to college, one way to do that without spending a lot of money is to do it through the military.
So
if you want to be a
that was
doctor
poor
and
choice
don't
on my part.
end up with $300,000 in debt, you can do it without having any debt by doing it through the military.
Well put.
At any point, Regan, did you choose to do a listening tour, let's say with like the Key Club or any of the organizations of students at that point? Or is that something you would do at another time?
Great question, Faye. That was a plan. I actually have the questions all prepared and ready, but COVID came, and so that never happened. And I really wanted to do this with students in person, in part because I wanted them to see who their superintendent is and get to know what this position is about. So my plan is to absolutely get Google groups together if we aren't back in school, but if we are back in school, I'm going there, and we'll be doing that in the fall.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Regan, there are a pair of questions for you in the chat in case you missed them.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so yes, I can share the slides with you, so I will do that in just a moment. And what were some of the ideas outside the box? There were ideas that came to us about how to do some partnering with outside entities, internships, ways to get kids connected with a community that we really want to pay attention to. There were interesting ideas about how to actually get our teachers involved with being professional development experts and how to harness their expertise in ways that would be really effective. I also think that we felt the communication with us around how much we need to be emphasizing celebration of pathways. And I'm not saying they had the idea of how to necessarily do it. It was just a bit outside the box that we need to step away from some of the traditional celebration that we do over and over and over and start thinking outside the box around how we do that for all students and celebrate how they've come along in our system.
Regan, you have another question in the chat box from James.
Did anyone
Can you
mention
read it?
why they thought rigor had diminished? I'm thinking back to, there certainly were some degrees of comments about why. I will say quite often there was reference, not necessarily around the rigor being diminished, but references to how students are not necessarily leaving school at the end of the day and having the same type of experience as they might have 25, 30 years ago, because there are a number of reasons for that. Kids are under a lot of now pressure because they're in so many different activities. There are students going home and they're not supervised and may be challenged with technology, for instance, not getting down to business of what homework or after school learning might be. There also were questions about the challenges of mental health in our society, but I think too, there was a real call that we get down to business as a district and having systems that are well versed to everyone in the system, so people know what the building blocks are and they stick to that. You heard about the intervention programs. People want the quality. And then I also think they want to hear that we're going to have expectations and accountability around how people are teaching day to day, and that it is supportive with professional development so people can get the job done. Okay, are you planning what your professional development will focus on for next year to address that concern? Well, I'd like to say that we've started to get busy around this, and I do have that crosswalk document to show you from the strategic planning that we've started minimally, just drafting things. But I have to say, I know the immediate PD is going to be around the potential for remote learning in some fashion that could occur. So I don't think we'll be getting as down to business with the rigor side until we get the formatting down for what remote learning might look like if we go to that model. Okay, did you get any suggestions on how to go back to our previous academic excellence? Where do we start, and any step-by-step plan? I can't say that anyone wrote that detailed to us, and because it's all anonymous, we're not sure who was speaking. But what I will say is, now that we have this sentiment that is so loud and clear, we will go after finding people who would be willing to come work with us on reflecting what was that in the past. I will give you one idea. There used to be an IIT team in the district, and those of you who might have been around a long time would know of it. It's the Instructional Improvement Team. And I have already reached out to past administrators in our district who actually helped to set this up and run it back in the day. And they are actually going to come and work with Tina and I to give us all the background. And we already have the plan from them on how they got that launched. And we've heard from some past teachers that that really was a great 3-year plan for teachers' professional development. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. And I will say these takeaways are heavy on the teacher side. I've got so much data and information and scribbled notes. I'll also be coming back to you with a side of feedback from town managers, EA22, and then I'm also going to be emailing each of you. We're going to set up triads and have you all come in for a listening tour session in a small group so that I can collect information from you as well. All right, next on the agenda is, are we ready to move on, Heath? Okay. About selecting Wednesday board meeting dates. And I asked to put this on the agenda because we had talked around going to the first Wednesday of the month, because we will be moving to 1 meeting a month in July. But I would like to reflect to you that the first Wednesday of the month is a challenge for a few reasons. I want to be just really straight up that the first of the month appears suddenly sometimes, if almost by surprise. But secondly, financially, we are still reconciling the prior month in the first of any given month. So I would like to ask that we consider the 3rd or the 4th Wednesday of the month, because that way all of our financials will be done. I can give you good representation at that meeting.
I'd like to make a motion that we select the 3rd Wednesday of the month.
Second.
So Tony has moved that, and Tanya has seconded that. there any discussion on that?
I'll add one point of discussion about the third Wednesday. Simply when we do have school vacation weeks in February and April, we'll just have to adjust that 1 month, but just wanted to make sure everyone knew that ahead.
All right. Do we have to vote on this? Is this is something we need to vote on, or we could just set this as a date?
I don't think so. I think
if nobody has a problem with it, let's just set this as a date. We won't have to go through the roll call. Does anybody think of this as a negative? Okay, so let's plan on the third Wednesday of every month, as Regan noted.
All right,
So
and
that means we don't have a meeting.
we wouldn't have one next week. The next meeting would be, of course,
be the 15th.
15th, yes.
Wait, what did you say? That's your what, Regan?
I said that my calendar wasn't up for July. I'm already on to August.
Okay.
So,
for a minute there, I thought you said my birthday, but actually that's my birthday, the 15th. So I'm actually not going to be in town that night. So I guess I'll miss that one.
You'll be on your phone in the car, Jim.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Been there, done that.
Okay.
Okay, so next up we have, is Olivia with us tonight?
She is not.
Okay. All right, so we'll move right on to the financial statement. So once again, I'm going to share my screen. So to let you know, we still have a payroll to come out of our warrant articles. The payroll is going to be a larger than usual payroll, and the reason for that is we have some final stipend payments to pay out for certain positions. We have vacation that we pay out to our support staff, and we have some other honorariums that we pay out in the last payroll. So we are probably looking at about a $1.5 to $1.6 million shift in this. Part of that will be payroll because our payroll is about $600,000 this time of the month. But also we have expenditures that are flowing out with final projects. For instance, summer projects we've already started early for facilities that we're able to pay out as well. So as you can see right now, we have derived savings that I had originally not thought would necessarily come through, but we have had savings in positions like substitutes, some of our therapy services. While they continued, they wouldn't necessarily continue at the same degree or rate, and so the contract fees were less. We also had purchases that we didn't end up needing to make because of certain supplies that weren't being utilized because we weren't in schools and so forth. Right now, I would say to you that this year we will not be needing to make a warrant article transfer. The closest we came to that was in transportation right here, but we've already prepaid our contract fees for the month of June. And so we are sitting very close to full expenditure. I will say to you that as we move out of the year, we will be reducing this figure of 10% remaining because of that last payroll and those final purchase amounts that will be flowing out. I think in the end, we'll probably be projecting about a 6.5% amount left over from the year. Any questions on this?
Regan, how does that line up with the estimated unexpended budgeted items from our last approved budget number? Is that
We'll come in higher. I think that we're going to have about $1.5 to $1.6 million carry forward, and
Okay.
that's about 6% of our overage, allowable overage. Yep. Any other questions before I move out? Okay. So I'll move on to the assistant superintendent update. I want to have the first point of order be a review around our public budget hearing. So the link 22 should have arrived in your mailboxes by Saturday, and we had a budget insert inside the link 22. So if you have constituents asking you questions, please guide them to the link 22. Everything is there for people to review and be able to ask good questions at the public hearing if they'd like to. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and just review some resources that are available to you and your constituents on our webpage. This is our RSU 22 budget webpage right now. If people open up the budget tab, they will see that there is a link right here in red, so they can just simply click on and go right into the public hearing that will occur tomorrow night at 7 p.m. The difference between a hearing and a budget meeting is that at a hearing, it is truly informational. So it's just simply presentation of the facts, answering questions that are posed, looking deeper into areas that participants might like to do, but it is not a place where we will be debating to a point where we'd be voting or changing what the proposal is. Those decisions will be made at the ballot box or by absentee ballot for July 14th. You can see here that this gives the Google Meet, allows people to see where the locations are for that July 14th referendum day. We do have some changes this year, so Hamden will be having their voting occur at the Ski-In Center, and in Frankfort, the voting will occur at the Congregational Church. Any public budget information that people are interested in, they can get right to these tabs, and hopefully, the link 22 has a guide for the public hearing, how we'll walk through things, but also the ballot itself, so they can understand what's being asked. There will be 7 questions this year, rather than the one summary question that people are used to seeing on the ballot. So I'll take any questions or comments about this process, the publicizing of it, anything you'd like to know.
Reagan, I have a question actually of fellow board members. Has anybody been approached with any questions about the budget this year?
Negative.
Yeah, I have not.
No.
No.
Okay, well, we will take silence as satisfaction.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll move on from that if there aren't any questions, and we'll have an interesting evening tomorrow seeing what the first ever public budget hearing is like. I hope that it goes smoothly, and I anticipate it will. One thing I wanted to do with you tonight on the assistant superintendent report is go after one of the most significant questions that I'm asked routinely, and that is about reopening of school. So I have put together just a short PowerPoint so that I hope this will be knowledge is power for you to be able to talk with folks who are asking you these questions. And then at the end, I have 3 questions I'd like to ask you as board members to weigh in on with me. So I'd like to focus tonight. I've already talked to you in the past about these steering committees that will be starting up, and we've already discussed what the membership will be, and the administrative team has been wonderful about collecting nominations, and we've made decisions about how to get started. But I really want you to recognize that we are coming together because we're doing the research necessary so that when these teams come together, they'll have information at their fingertips. That's what's going on now. There's a lot of collection that we're doing at central office. We're going to have these teams evaluate different approaches, and what's wonderful for us is there are schools that are starting ahead of us because they are in different places in the nation, and I'm getting plans every day. I just want to say so many stakeholders in our community want us to be successful, and they're getting the resources to us here in Central. Then we're going to ask for plan and execution. I want to talk about one of the guiding principles I'm using and how I'm making decisions with the teams and our timelines. I think that what's really important is to remember that time management is all about deciding what quadrant you're in. I would say to you on March 17th, we were in quadrant 1. It felt like a crisis, an emergency. We've got to figure out, we're not going to school the next day. What are we going to do? I would say to you right now, I evaluate that we're in quadrant 2. This is incredibly important. The urgency is there, don't get me wrong, but it's not urgency that our children need to know tomorrow what they're going to be doing for schooling. I will say there are many families who have written to me and come to the public budget forums and have said it absolutely is urgent because I have work plans to make, employment is calling, and I entirely understand that. But our goals are going to be about planning for improvement and making sure that we are preventing us from making a mistake because we move too fast or we don't have the appropriate information. And we all know that week to week things change. So I just wanted to be very transparent that this is the quadrant from which we're operating right now. And I completely understand there are perspectives that want us over here. So this is the timeline we're working with right now. And you'll have a chance at the end of this presentation to weigh in on what you feel about it. We're in June right now, so this establishment of the committees has occurred. I'm now working on the content and the pre-planning so that the committee work will be effective. We are going to launch the committee work with all of this pre-planning effort July 13th, 20th, 27th, August 3rd. Those weeks will be the weeks in which our committees are moving ahead to make plans, proposals, and get some of that research evaluation done. Whoops. Sorry about that. We will communicate progress along the way, and we will be having different modes of communication. We know what's worked well for our community from what we've already done with remote learning, but I think frequency of communication is what needs to increase, and so we'll be making sure that happens. August 7th is a pivotal date. I really would like to say to you tonight that that is a deadline date in my mind that we need to have a reopening plan decision. There are people that would like to see this date earlier. I recognize that. I just think August 1st is going to be a date where we're seeing different decisions made by other entities bigger than us. And I want to be sure that we take time to reflect on what those are and the information that is put out at that time. August 10th and 17th will be implementation phase weeks. So we'll be taking the reopening plan and making sure that those 2 weeks are all about getting it out, getting ourselves in place, and having the communication so everyone knows what's going to happen. August 24th, we'll be having all of our employee base back so that we have an entire week of pre-planning and making sure that people are on the ground, ready to go. And then September 1st is the first day of school. These are the committees that we'll be working on, and I want you to get a peek at the content. Of course, the content goes on for pages, but just to give you an idea, instruction, it's going to be that decision-making team around models. Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be remote? Is it going to be a hybrid combination? What type of technology will we need for instruction? What resources do we need for instruction? What types of procedures and processes are involved in instructional decision-making that we have to have as keys? There is much going on in that committee, and it is our largest one. Operations is going to have all of the procedures, processes, technology, management, PPE, employment questions. All of those things will be housed in operations, and we have a breadth of representation on this committee so that we have stakeholder representation and we have the minds who are thinking in different ways. Communication is going to be about making sure we have really solid information sharing, that we consider different mediums and how we communicate with everybody. The right conversations with the right people are being planned, and that we don't just hope that those happen, that we make them happen, that we're going to start video series so that people not just hear what to do, but see what to do, and that we continue to say, when does surveys work for us? Where is that energy most important, and when? And then the resources committee is really a funding committee. So we're going to talk about budgeting, where are we going to have to make shifts in what we've already budgeted, what funding sources are out there that we need to capitalize on, purchasing, contracts, rentals, what reductions are we going to have to make in certain lines, because we know there are other lines that need it. I do want you to understand that I'm going to be asking every committee to be looking at these cross-cutting questions, because these are prompts that I did not think of on my own. I happen to serve on the board for Acadia Hospital. They do amazing planning, and I have been listening closely to what they have been working on. I have been talking with representatives from the University of Maine almost on a weekly basis, and it's been absolutely fantastic, just eye-opening. And I've realized that there are some themes we need to be talking about no matter who we are on a committee or in a position. So since COVID, what is now legitimized in education? What is it we wouldn't have done before COVID? Now we've got the green light. What has COVID made obsolete for us? In our system, there certainly are things that we just don't do anymore, and we need to get those on paper. What has RSU 22 now been emboldened to do? We've tried some new things. We've had some success. We've had some challenges. What is it we're going to take by the horns and really make happen? Are our typical district and school strategies and procedures still relevant in this new era and approach, depending on what type of model we pick? In what areas can RSU 22 be a leader during these times of change? So I want every committee to look at this. Where can that committee see we have leadership potential, and let's go for it? And what is the longer range impact of any decision we make today? Because there are so many decisions where we're pulling a trigger quickly because we're very concerned that we need an answer. But there are always effects after that decision is made. So I want us to be forward thinking there. And then what is the sustainability of any decision we make? So I'd like to just have you talk with me now. As an RSU 22 board member, what are your greatest concerns? What aspects of school reopening resonate the most with you? If you could set a timeline for decision making, what would it look like? Might not agree with mine. And what are your communication needs to best serve your constituents who are out there? So I'll stop there and just let people talk. And I can't see the chat right now if I leave these questions up, so someone will need to prompt me.
All right, Regan, I'll keep an eye on the chat. Anybody that would like to start, go ahead.
Regan, this is Les. One of my biggest concerns are with regard to equity, especially, students coming from single parent or double parent homes where both parents have to work, and income is a concern for them. And so I would encourage you to address, at all four of the main points, to consider equity very carefully when making decisions.
Thank you.
Marianne, go ahead if you have a question.
Yeah, actually, I have 11 of them. I attended the MSBA webinar on schools and planning for COVID. It was a very good webinar, and I came away with 11 questions, which I did send to Regan, and she responded by saying that many of the questions would get answered through these committees. But there are a few, I guess I'd like to put them out there just for everyone and to generate maybe some more discussion or deeper thinking. So one is, how are we measuring whether students are engaging in a meaningful way? That's the first one. Second one is, how will we help students develop the skills they will need to meet ongoing challenges that place them at the center of organizing their day and their learning? The participants in the webinar found in their assessment and evaluation that the biggest weakness was executive function in their students. They didn't have the ability to structure their days themselves. They're used to teachers structuring their days, having a set schedule, bells ringing, attendance taken, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a really significant thing. And they were talking about having to spend some time building those skills into students. Third question, are we planning so that we can give all students face-to-face time as often as possible? 4, what metrics will be used to tell us if we are successful or not in the approach we're taking? The actual metrics. 5, do we have the capacity to collect data, evaluate, and adjust on the spot to correct for unforeseen problems? 6, how are we planning for what most see as inevitable financial burdens? 7, how will we be meeting the needs of incoming freshmen and kindergartners in any kind of hybrid or remote format? 8, how will we meet the needs of essential workers that need school to be there for their children 5 days a week, kind of alluding to what Lester was talking about? 9, will schedules of classes at HA be sent out early so students have plenty of opportunity to decide what classes to take, given that some may prefer virtual-only classes and others may want more face-to-face time? 10, do student-staff ratios need to change given this past experience we've had, which is what Regan talked about earlier. And the final question was, do we have any sense of teacher attrition given the current restructuring of their jobs? Are there teachers out there that just cannot function in either a hybrid or a remote setting? And do we have any sense of how many that might be, or what we might be looking at in terms of trying to recruit new teachers? So those were the questions I came away with. I assume many of them will get answered as time goes on, but I did want to put them out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you, Marianne. Those are all questions, like you said, Regan said, the committees will have to answer for us.
Regan, I have a question. Technology, depending on the physical parameters of what we determine as a full class and how that might work in a hybrid session, and getting back to Jane's earlier comment, how do we, I've heard of, all different regime of things with different schools, rotating schedules, 2 weeks for part of the class, 2 weeks for the other. How do we make sure that the experience is, and maybe it's an alternating similar experience as opposed to an all the time similar experience? Has that been talked about at all? And if so, the second part of that, from a budget standpoint, I know we did bump up some of our technology reserve for capital. What kind of lead time, what kind of testing? I know if we're having difficulty doing a hybrid board meeting today, how do we learn from that and use that to maybe test our ability to do that in a classroom setting?
Well, I just want to commend Nate. Nate has been so forward thinking for us, and he has actually approached me about making a purchase, which we have, for a technology device called an OWL. We do have some of these first generation in a couple of schools, but this is technology that will sit in a classroom for video and follow the teacher with an electronic eye, basically. And we are going to be trying that out very soon. It may have already arrived, and Nate could weigh in if he'd like to on that. So I think those types of steps are being taken so we do have lead time to test things and to see what is truly viable. We also need to look at the budget side of it, but we have put ourselves in a great position if our capital reserve dedication for technology passes. I'd also say to you that your comment about having kind of a flip-flop of a model, so you might go remote for a while and then flip or switch into having some time at school. I think all of those variations are going to be really important. And the primary conversation that I've been having at my level is around what degree of choice and options is our district able to facilitate early so that we can help people have a schedule that is working for them, but also does not overstrain our ability to professionally develop, to provide the staffing, and make sure that we have the procedures in place that facilitate that learning best. So we're trying to decide to what degree our committees can wrestle with that.
Thank you.
I went ahead and shared a link for you to look at the product that we're going to be trying out soon and possibly implementing if it goes well.
Thanks, Nate. Do you have anybody else that would like to weigh in on some of Regan's questions?
This is Faye. I guess my concern is ensuring that our students are moving forward, that we're finding a way to assess whether or not students' needs are being met and whether or not students are indeed learning at a rate that'll help them to continue on that path towards the next grade level or however we want to do that. I know we were talking in the education committee about, they would do the NWEA at the beginning of the year. If we're in remote, that might be a little difficult to do. So I think we need to be able to assess where our students have gotten to this past year, where they are as we start the year, and then figure out how do we continually assess kids, ensuring that they're meeting the standards that we're hoping for. And that goes back to that rigor, that we talked about in that last slide. It's kind of hard to look at rigor if you don't have students in front of you to ensure that they are moving forward. So, I mean, it's just a complexity that's unbelievable. And every time you answer one question, it opens up 4 more. So I think we're constantly going to have to be reviewing, and these committees will have their work cut out for them, I'm sure.
I appreciate everything that you're bringing up here, Faye, and others as well. And one thing I'd like to share is that I recognize that many of these questions have answers that are new to us in RSU 22, but they're not new to some other entities. There are some charter schools that have been virtual for quite some time, and I've already done a couple of webinars with one out of New Hampshire. And every time I'm on with them or I look at their resources, I think they've already wrestled with this for us. And we just have to be open enough to believe someone else and not think that it's our own experience that can always only be the right answer. So I think that we'll have some pathways to follow. We just have to believe.
Anyone else? Okay. I just want to say that did you have something, Tony? Go ahead.
I do.
Okay,
I was just wondering, where we have these target dates in August for deadlines to come up with a plan, and a lot of people are going to be absent on the 15th, maybe we ought to consider moving that 22nd, moving to the 22nd, so we can get made aware of those details that are going to be announced on August 8th or 7th.
Sure, I certainly would be open to adjusting.
That would give you
another
give you more time to put things together, and the board could have a meeting before it gets announced. My thought.
I don't have a problem with that, but I don't know. Do you feel, Regan, that we probably still won't have concrete announcement really to be by the 22nd? I mean, because you're really looking at a hard date of the 7th of August.
Correct. We wouldn't have a hard and fast decision, but I will say at least it would have been 2 weeks of having some meetings occur, and it would give us some good insight into a direction that we're headed.
So, Tony, were you suggesting the 22nd of August?
No, the 22nd of July.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Or
That's
we
what I
could
thought.
we could even do the 29th of July. If that just, so the board has a chance to hear the announcement before it's sent out to the public.
Right.
I'm certainly open to any date, and I do think the later we go, the more information would be fresh and available.
I'm fine with that. We did have 3 members that put in the chat that they wouldn't be available on the 15th. So if that makes it more available for more board members to be at that meeting on the 22nd, that would be fine.
So I do see that Jen, our principal at Weatherby, has put in the chat that there's concern about the board not forwarding hires. And that concern is certainly one that I'm aware of. People sometimes, if they don't have that contract in hand, get nervous and would consider jumping ship.
So what if we kept the 15th, and then at that point, if we wanted to have a meeting the 1st of August, we could schedule one that first week of August, and we could have more discussion a couple of days before you need to make that decision. Would you be okay with that, Tony?
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea, and we already said that we had the option to add special meeting dates when I made the motion to go back to 1 a month. So that would be, I think that would be ideal.
Okay, so let's just keep that meeting, and then we'll talk about the potential of a first week in August at our meeting in July.
Great, sounds good.
No, I just wanted to say, Regan, I appreciate the timeline. I think that board members and community members will appreciate that also, that we have that hard, a timeline that we can look forward to, and we know that we have something to look forward to. So thank you very much for that. And I'm pretty confident that the committee will have student achievement as their #1 goal. So depending on, we can see this fall, it may look different, but it'll be their #1 goal, I'm sure. So thank you.
Thank you.
One more question, if you have the time here. Refresh my memory. With K through 2 notwithstanding, were the grading policies pretty much the same once come March, when the kids went home and did pretty much all their work online? I mean, I've heard, well, I won't say what I've heard, but was it pretty much the same?
So grades K to 5 had different ways of getting feedback around their work. We didn't necessarily grade work, and the principals are on, they can go ahead and add in what I'm saying here. Grades 6 through 12, we tried to retain traditional grading approaches, and we certainly knew that we needed to have latitude around that depending on students' personal experiences. And I would say, from what I have derived, there was some good success with this in 2 ways. I think it kept students attentive to getting their work turned in and completed because they knew it was on the line for a grade. And it also is a motivator and a carrot at times for some students to have that. But it also gave them some feedback from their teachers. In a sense, you couldn't necessarily get that in some other ways besides your classes or check-ins. But on the downside, I think there were some students who may have felt some level of penalty. And so we need to really look into that. And when we talk about equity, are we penalizing students because they had different experiences at home and access to the remote learning environment, and it wasn't because of their capability or dedication to the work itself?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right. Does that conclude your report, Regan?
Yes, it does.
All right. So that brings us to questions of board members. We've already had a lot of question and answer tonight, but I'm sure we might have, does there anybody have any additional questions? Seeing none, Mary Ann actually brought something up that, and I don't know if Bill Tracy's here tonight, but Nick or Fred might be able to answer. What are we doing for HA students signing up for classes? How are they doing that? Is Nick with us?
I can answer if you want, if those guys aren't here.
All right.
This is Susan Thibodeau from Reedsburg. They have a complete online scheduling program, and we had the HA guidance counselors visiting the middle schools prior to school closure, so students did have a chance to hear about the opportunities there, the classes available. And then Don is on, so he can speak, but our school counselor at Reedsburg followed up on every kid who hadn't signed up for classes, working in conjunction with the staff at HA.
Okay,
sorry, I couldn't get to my unmute button quick enough, but I reiterate what Susan said. She was absolutely correct.
All right, thanks. All right, John, that takes us to policy considerations.
Yep. So let's see. We got 5 here, or 6 here for second reading and adoption. The first one's JLCA, physical examination of students. So the updates since the first reading are in blue if you've looked at them. The word guardians has been added to the first sentence in the first paragraph. We also added the recommended sentence and suggested sentence in blue in the second paragraph that states the district reserves the right to require a physical examination sooner than 24 months if there is a change in the health status of the student. That's all there was on that. I move for approval of second reading and adoption.
Second.
So John moved, Mary Ann second. John, do you think if we get each one of these on the floor and have discussion on each one of the second readings, if we don't have any one that has problems with any of these policies, maybe we can take them as a slate. We'll go down through them, discuss each one individually, and then as long as doesn't seem to be any discussion one way or the other, if there is, we can take that one separately. Do you think that will work?
It works to me because the changes that are on here, the updates are very small.
Okay.
And some of them are similar in each policy. So.
Okay, so let's go down through all the seconds. We'll take a motion in a second on everyone just to get them on the floor and discuss them. So okay. At this time, if we want to discuss policy JLCA, we could.
So policy JLCC, communicable infectious diseases. Again, the updates are in blue. We added the acronym CDC and the word guardians in the first paragraph. Am I doing a motion on each one of these?
Yeah, let's do a motion in a second. That way we can discuss it at this time.
So I move for approval of second reading and adoption of policy JLCC.
Second.
John moved, Mary Ann seconded. Any discussion? Okay.
All right, the next one's policy JLCE, emergency care. There were no changes on that one. So I move for approval and second reading and adoption of policy JLCE.
Second.
So John moved, Mary Ann seconded. Discussion? All right.
The next one is JLCEA, DNR, do not resuscitate request. Again, the updates from the first reading are in blue, and we added physician's assistant or nurse practitioner in the second paragraph. That's the only changes. So I move for approval of second reading and adoption of policy JLCEA.
Second.
All right. John moved, Mary Ann seconded. Once again, discussion? Okay.
The next one's JLCF, allergies. Again, in blue, added school events to the last sentence of first paragraph. We also added physician assistant nurse practitioner to the second and third paragraph. With that, I move for approval of second reading and adoption of policy JLCF.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Mary Ann. Discussion? All right, John. One more.
The last one here for second reading is policy INI, which is the copyright policy. We added the legal reference, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1998. That's the only change in that. I move for approval of second reading and adoption of policy INI.
Second.
Okay, so John has moved, Mary Ann has seconded. So we have any discussion on that one first? Okay, so we have on the floor policy JLCA, JLCC, JLCE, JLCEA, JLCF, and policy INI. All those, we're going to go through. That's why I'm doing this, right? Faye Anderson.
Aye.
Jim Baines.
Aye.
John Cogskill. Jane Dyer.
Aye.
Rob Frank.
Aye.
Lester French.
Aye.
Alan Gordon.
Aye.
Jessica Hamilton.
Aye.
Karen Hawks.
Aye.
John Holmes.
Aye.
Tanya Jean-Jacques.
Aye.
Anthony Lecatore.
Aye.
Chair is aye. Marianne Royal.
Aye.
And John Cogskill. You there now? John's still on mute, but we're unanimous other than John. So I rule that passed.
All right, and I got one here for first reading. This is policy IKAB, grading and reporting of student progress. So this came to us, recommended changes from the MSMA. And theirs had a lot to do with measuring proficiency. So we tailored what they're recommending to meet what our district does, while still making sure to capture the main points. And I think the policy committee, at least for the first reading here, I think we did a good job with it. The updates here include a title change from student progress reports to parents and guardians to what they were recommending, which is grading and reporting of student progress. We also had stating purpose of the district's grading and reporting system right at the beginning. And then the last paragraph is something the committee felt should be included, which is recommended by the MSMA, but we tweaked it a little bit. That's pretty much it. I move for approval of first reading of policy IKAB.
Second.
All right, we have John second, John moved, Marianne seconded. Discussion.
I do have, it's Marianne, some concern about the third paragraph, and I wonder if we can reword it so that we can take out the word teachers. I just don't think policy should be directing teachers to do things, and make it more generic, something like information from multiple and varied opportunities will be used for student demo. I just want to take the word teachers out of there.
I think that's something we can review. This is only first reading, so we certainly can review it in the next meeting.
Great.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote, starting with Faye Anderson. Jim Baines?
Aye.
Aye.
John Cogskill? Jane Dyer?
Aye on this one and on the.
All right, thank you, John. I got you. I got you too, Jane. Rob Frank?
Aye.
Lester French?
Aye.
Alan Gordon? Jessica Hamilton?
Aye.
Karen Hawks,
Aye.
John Holmes,
Aye.
Tanya Jean-Jacques,
Aye.
Anthony Liberatore,
Aye.
Chair is aye, and Marianne Royal.
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you, John. Okay, turn that back to you, Regan.
Okay, our next agenda item is to discuss and act on administrator contract. You did receive the following chart in your email, but I'm going to pull that up right now. So I would recommend to you that we move forward this year to accept the recommended salary and contract length for each of the administrators as is outlined in the chart.
You don't need it from the pool, as long as if you're going out on the water.
Can we get a motion and we'll discuss?
So I move that we accept the administrator compensation package.
Second.
All right. I missed the second. We got Lester as the mover.
Second.
Is that you, Jane? Jane, okay. Jane with a second. Discussion?
I would just like to say, this, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's not what I wanted to say, but I would like to, first off, thank the administrative team and certainly support this and understand why it would be consistent among you all. But I would be remiss if I don't say what I say almost every year, which is I'm hoping that moving forward, we might consider merit increase based on performance. And while we budget 3%, perhaps there's some variability based on, you know, the admin's performance. And I realize that can result in comfortable conversations, and it's a public document, so I realize it can cause some discomfort there. But that's would be something that I would advocate for. And it's my last time voting for this, so I thought it was worthy of noting that.
Thank you, Karen. I would weigh in that in the past, RSU 22 has had merit-based compensation for administrators. And in the past few years, it has tended to move towards similar amounts. So I think the board has certainly shared with me the interest in moving back to that type of a model. So we'll be talking with the legislative team.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Is anyone else wish to discuss?
My only question for Karen is, if this is the last time you're voting for it, are you looking for anybody else to take that ball and run with it in future years?
If you'd like to, you can.
All right.
All right. Seeing no more discussion, let's take a roll call vote. Faye Anderson,
Aye.
Jim Baines,
Aye.
John Collinsville,
Aye.
Jane Dyer,
Aye.
Rob Frank,
Aye.
Lester French,
Aye.
Alan Gordon,
Aye.
Jessica Hamilton,
Aye.
Karen Hawks,
Aye.
John Holmes,
Aye.
Tanya Jean-Jacques. Sorry, Tanya.
Jean-Jacques.
Yeah, I
Yes.
got it.
Yeah, aye.
Anthony Liberatore.
Aye.
Chair is aye. Marianne Royal.
Aye.
That is unanimous. All right. That brings us to setting meeting dates. The committees. What do we need for dates? Everybody's all set?
We'll take a hiatus for budget after tomorrow.
There you go.
I better see you on the 14th of July somehow, Rob.
Yeah, yes, that is true.
Les, I was wondering, is it too late to change the community relations meeting from 4:30 to, let's say, maybe 5 o'clock or 5:30?
Tanya, it's scheduled for 5 right now. I thought I might have made a mistake on that. But I can change it to 5:30 if that works better.
Yeah, I think that if that would be okay, yes. 5:30 would work better, if that's okay.
Yep, that's Jim. Is there any
No,
problem with
5:30 is
that?
fine.
All right.
Thank you.
So Gloria, if you could make a note of that, I'll adjust the agenda.
All right.
Mary? Yeah. Mary, this is Jane. Do we want to, we'll have to reschedule, it says July 1st, so that would obviously have to go to the 15th. Do we want to chat about and see what it looks like coming closer to then and see if we need a meeting or what?
Sure.
Sure. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll look at it like the week before and see.
Yes. Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. Terrific.
All right. We do not have an executive session tonight. That's correct, right?
Correct.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay. We have a motion from Dr. Liberatore. Anyone else?
Second.
And a second from John Holmes. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Bye.
Aye.
Did you get all those?
If anybody's opposed, let me know
Bye.
now. Otherwise, we're going home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.